So Ajahn would now like to give everyone the opportunity to ask any questions you may have.
Can I talk a bit about how one who is a samana or trained to be a samana, who is trying to cultivate such strong renunciation and restraint and working with the vows, how they can also have a kind and loving heart?
The question was asking Ajahn how, for one who's living the samana life and determined, really practicing in renunciation and striving hard, how to, at the same time, really not to neglect the cultivation of metta, or how to develop metta. And Ajahn replied that well, really the four Brahmaviharas, metta, karuna, mudita, and upekkha, when we're really living this life of firm striving, if the mind does attain to peace, if there is samadhi in the mind, then that itself is a cool state, it is a peaceful state, and metta, loving kindness, will be there automatically. When your mind is peaceful, you don't think of harming yourself, and you don't think of harming others. So what we can do is use this communal lifestyle of ours in order to develop that giving up which develops metta. For example, we all have to practice the acharyavata, the duties towards our teacher, and help each other out. These are the duties that students have towards their teacher. And then having done that, when you go off alone and practice, your mind should become peaceful, and then the more peaceful your mind is, then that metta, that loving kindness, is there as a natural result. And in doing so then, you become one who sees the danger in the slightest fault, and one who doesn't wish to be heedless in any way. And again, this will lead to the arising of metta.
Can Ajahn give some advice or skillful means for practicing metta, specifically in conjunction with the breath?
So the question was asking is there any suggestion or advice on how to develop metta using anapanasati? Ajahn replied that anapanasati, mindfulness of in and out breathing, is a way of calming the mind using the breath. And yes, it is possible to develop metta at the same time. It's quite easy. One can just, as one breathes in, simply think, may all beings be well. Breathing out, may all beings be well. We can also, for example, bring to mind the Buddha and recollect the qualities of the Buddha. This is called buddhanusati. But with metta, you could simply say, in Thai you say ben sukh, which means say be well, or may there be peace, or may there be happiness. Find your own mantra, your own bodhikam that you say to yourself as you breathe in and out. So this is a very good skillful means and a technique for bringing the mind to peace, combining metta and in and out breathing. So this is how you can do that. From
the mantras that are like to change that.
บริกรรมนี่เปลี่ยนบ้างได้ไหมครับ Yes, fine.
Can Ajahn explain what the Kriya Ajahn mean when they say the Eightfold Path comes together as one?
Eightfold Path comes together as one. Where have you heard that being said? What's it called?
When the Eightfold Path comes together as one.
Where and when have you heard that in specific?
Magapala.
What did he say though? What did he use? Just trying to make it clearer. So.
At the moment of path and fruit, the Eightfold Path comes together as one.
question was, could Ajahn explain what's meant by when sometimes we hear the expression that the Eightfold Path becomes one at the moment of, say, realizing the Dhamma, or the Eightfold Path, the entire harmony of the Eightfold Path. So Ajahn began by explaining. So the Eightfold Path is a path of practice. It's divided into various factors, beginning with samadhi. Then we have the remaining factors: the right view, then right thoughts, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and leading all the way to right samadhi, right concentration. And another way to divide it is to group these 8 factors into the threefold training of sila, samadhi, and panya. So the sila group, this will include the vinaya and the core, the way the practices in the monastery, and restraining of the mind, and being very careful in our daily life. This then leads on to that samadhi, that develops the samadhi, and when this arises, panya grows as well. So there may be times though when our mindfulness is weak, and we don't really have the strength to see the Dhamma clearly. But when there is enough strength of mind and enough strength of mindfulness, and particularly we've developed all these groups of Dhammas, like the 7 Bojjhangas, the 4 Satipathanas, the 5 Indriyas, the 5 Phalas, and the whole of the Eightfold Path, then we can say it's one, or it comes to harmony in the sense that we have enough strength simply to penetrate with insight. For example, that form is impermanent. So when what we call maksamaki, or harmony of the path, is really that all these path factors, all these qualities of Dhammas, these have all come together, enabling us to see very clearly this one thing, or this enlightenment truth. Form, for example, that external form is not self, it's not real. That's simply what it means. The question was, what does it mean to when we talk about emptiness as one's meditation object, or how do we use emptiness as a meditation object? And Ajahn explained, a word for this, or the technical term is upassamanusati. That's reflection, or reflecting, contemplating on the nature of nibbana as being free of any defilements and free of any sense of self. It's empty in that sense. It's another word or way of describing it is the asankata dhatu, the element which is totally unconditioned element. Because the conventional world, the world we live in, is a combination of nama and rupa, as the form, materiality, mentality, or the objects and the labels or names. But really, it's void of any self. It's actually all empty. So when we see everything as empty, we'll understand that, for example, there's no one within us. There's no me. There's no him. There's no them. Everything that we really perceive, we perceive it in the light of its conventional reality. The people, animals, male, female, all of these things are just conventions which we apply to the world. And when we see that, this is what we call, or what we mean by emptiness. In order to really understand this, though, you need samadhi to be firmly established, which will give rise to the necessary wisdom. And first, the first one will have kanika, or momentary concentration, or upajara samadhi, the next level of concentration, which will give rise to a certain amount of insight. But really, it's only as you go deeper into your samadhi that you'll be able to see this as it really is. It will be vipassana. And when you really are able to contemplate in this way, then you're freed from this, freed from viewing the world in its in the conventional sense. And this is how to contemplate. Or this is when you're really able to contemplate emptiness. Can you what?
Contemplate non-self.
Oh.
Like for my mind, like emptiness is
yes, you can. Actually, it's very much the same thing.
The Buddha advises us when we're trying to aim for higher states of mind that we should devote our time equally between three different characters, which is concentration, energy, and equanimity. Can someone give us some advice on practice we should be trying out to in the energy and the equanimity side? Concentration is obviously anapanasati, but the energy and equanimity is something that could give us some sound advice.
The question was that there's one place in the Buddha's teachings where we're taught, the Buddha teaches the monks to develop in three ways or develop three aspects equally. That's samadhi, concentration, virya, which is putting forth effort or energy, and upekkha, equanimity. So the question was to invite Ajahn to give some advice on how to develop the second quality, the second two, effort and equanimity, because we've had a lot of teachings on concentration already. So Ajahn said that, well, if you look at the whole path of practice, it's divided up in sila, samadhi and panya, and the effort is, what developing effort is simply effort to develop this very path. So whether you're living in communal life, in a community, or you're living alone, the real effort has to be placed in understanding and seeing your mental states. So those which are unwholesome, particularly the delighting and aversion, those unwholesome mental states which have arisen, you have to abandon them. And those wholesome mental states which have arisen, then you have to maintain them. And similarly, you have to prevent the unwholesome ones from arising and bring about the wholesome mental states that haven't arisen yet. So you can do this in conjunction with your samadhi practice. Because, for example, if you are walking meditation or sitting meditation, you could say, well, you're developing samadhi, but in order to do that, you have to have that virya or effort accompanying it, the effort to abandon those unwholesome states. And when the mind is peaceful, as a result of that samadhi, there's no delighting and aversion in the mind, then upekkha, equanimity, is the natural result of that. So whether you call it sila, samadhi, panya, you've always got virya, effort, and upekkha, equanimity, bound up with that path of practice. The more strength of mind you have, the more clearly you'll see this. Actually, it's all really one practice. Luang Por Chah, he would never divide up these different aspects. He'd always emphasize that it's just one. Say, another place where we can see it is in the 7 Bojjhangas, this development of the 7 practices of enlightenment. So whether it's mindfulness or virya or piti, stillness, or leading finally to equanimity, whenever these things are present or arise, we just have to see them very clearly. Whenever upekkha arises, see it very clearly. All of these things, all of these factors, say piti, virya, upekkha, so that we have in the 7 Bojjhangas, these all arise based on samadhi. So if you really just develop in your samadhi, you'll see this for yourself, and each of us individually will soon see this for ourselves.
Can we have some more specific details on developing?
So the question was if Ajahn could perhaps give a bit more guidance or advice on exactly how to develop upekkha or equanimity. Upekkha means equanimity, letting go. Usually the mind doesn't incline to this naturally. When when the internal sense bases come into contact with external sense objects, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body and mind meets sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, the mind can't just simply let go. It straight away inclines and rushes towards either delight or aversion. These are the two extremes which we are often called attachment to sensuality and attachment to pain. It becomes Kalikana Yoga and Akiñcano Yoga. So how do we do away with this and abandon this? Again, the path is a threefold training of Sila, Samadhi and Panya. We have to practice for a long time restraining the mind. The mind won't naturally incline towards equanimity. What we see is that when we develop in Samadhi, upekkha, equanimity, would arise as a natural result of that. Again, take these 7 bojjhangas, whether you look at piti or virya, there'll always be upekkha accompanying it, because these are the enlightenment factors. When there's no delighting and no aversion in the mind, then the mind is naturally equanimous. What samadhi does, it destroys the hindrances, and as a result the mind doesn't run out into delighting and aversion. It's as if wisdom is looking after and keeping the mind in check. The mind then sees things as they really are in the light of 3 characteristics. It sees, for example, simply the body as just a body, or elements as simply elements, or in the scene there is only the scene, in the herd there is only the herd. And similarly with moods. Moods are understood simply as impermanent moods in the mind, so as a result there's just a natural equanimity regarding those moods. The way to develop this, though, is to start right from the basic first steps, practicing and developing and training in the core patibat, because it's a path, and this path leads to the understanding of Dhamma. At first it's all not very clear, but we practice on, and in time this process begins to take an energy of its own. It begins to turn or revolve of its own accord. As there's less and less delighting and aversion, then upekkha, equanimity, arises naturally in the mind, and as a result of this we're able to see the mind and the body as it really is, simply in the light of 3 characteristics. And at this point, that's when there's really equanimity is really developed. No. The question is regarding bunya or merit. What exactly is merit? How can you really share it? And can your parents, for example, really receive the benefits of your practice or your merit, dedicating your merit to them? And can it really lead to, for example, people forgiving you? And Ajahn answered, Bun, merit. What this really is, this means happiness of mind, and it comes as a result of good actions or goodness. It can be developed, or it arises based on dana, generosity, sila, or say, for example, practicing samadhi, developing concentration. Merit arises, you can start in many ways. Simply keeping the core up, developing in renunciation, letting go. This gives rise to happiness of mind, because it leads to a mind which is not selfish. The mind, the heart, straight away feels light and happy. And this is what you do when you spread metta. You take this strength of mind, or this happy feeling, and you incline it towards other people. This is called sharing merits. Or you can anumodana, you can rejoice in the good activities that other people have done, and as a result happiness arises in your own mind. So whether it's developing sila, samadhi and panya, or seeing others helping out, seeing others, other people's good actions. You can rejoice in this and spread the metta, spread the loving kindness outwards. This is spreading the goodness. And it is possible for other people's minds to receive this. When they do, they feel happy. There's a feeling of well-being in the mind when this is received. We have an example in the suttas where King Bimbisara, he made merit and shared his merit with his relatives, and they in turn received the fruits of the merit that he was dedicating towards them, and it helped them feel good and go beyond their suffering. So the question was if after one has done some chanting and meditated or done some formal practice, and then but the mind hasn't really grown very peaceful and there isn't so much of a well-being in the mind, is it possible then to dedicate merits and share merits and spread metta? Ajahn replied that if the mind isn't really, use the word yen, which means cool, if there isn't really that coolness in the mind, then there won't really be the necessary strength. You can, just simply based on the effort that one's put forth and the energy and the dedication to practice, you can anumodana, you can bring on a sense of rejoicing in one's own practice. But there's not much strength of mind in order to really dedicate that out towards other people and in order to help them be happy and well. So basically, if you really want to, if you really do develop some peace of mind, then there will be the strength in order to really dedicate the merits to others, and the fruits will be much greater.
I was hoping Anan could give me some advice for the problem I'm having with my practice. I find that as my practice deepens and I'm able to put things down and clear my mind and calm my mind for even short periods of time, that what follows is actually an incredible burst of energy and uplift and inspiration. And then the mind isn't cool, and actually the senses become quite heightened. If things look beautiful before, now they really look beautiful. And I find if I actually am able to not think for a little while, what follows that are really interesting and very clear and sharp thoughts. And I find it's actually very hard to not delight in all this. And also because it has this perception, like, I perceive it as A, it's just so much, my senses are more heightened, and B, there's a sense of, oh boy, like, my practice is working. And so, it's just, but I'm starting to see this kind of a vicious cycle I get caught in. Sort of the whole thing will repeat.
Yeah, I'll try and summarize. So yeah, the question is to do with after a period of meditation or concentration or peace of mind, sometimes there's actually an increase in that heightened sense stimulation or awareness of sensuality, one aspect, and then also a kind of delighting in one's improvement of practice. So how to, any advice on that? So Ajahn answer was in the four satipatthānas, there's body, feelings, and mind objects. The feelings satipatthāna, we're taught to contemplate and understand very clearly pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither pleasant nor painful feelings. This is what we really have to know and understand. So at first, when you come to practice samadhi and you experience some basic results, your mind, in a sense, delights and gets happy on account of this, because for so long we've been constantly moving or falling into this dynamic of delighting. So this is a natural inclination of the mind. And we do this even more so. We do this even more so than before in the world, because now because we're really trying to develop this samadhi practice. It means so much to us. Now this samadhi has an amount of certain amount of equanimity, but because this equanimity hasn't really come to fruition yet, as a result we get a bit lost in these feelings of happiness and bliss that arise with our samadhi. So in time we'll learn to develop, to see with wisdom that these are just temporary states. This samadhi is just temporary, so not to get too excited by it. As to these feelings, we have to just see them and experience them as simply feelings. What mindfulness does, what samadhi does, is it temporarily reduces or allays the nivaranas or hindrances. But when that ends, they often seem to come back stronger than before. Okay? This is because we still haven't made an end of them with wisdom. We haven't actually destroyed the defilements. We've simply suppressed them temporarily. So what we have to do is practice patient endurance. If we have patient endurance, then in time that mindfulness and wisdom will arise. One thing is that you're experiencing these things, so these sense stimulations very strongly now, and you may well feel that you're even more stimulated than before, but actually what's happening is that you're just simply able to see it clearer than before. In the past, and in particularly in lay life, there's an incredible amount of greed, hatred, delusion and sense stimulation going on the whole time, but we're just not really aware of it. You kind of compare it to, say, a heat, which we weren't aware of, but now suddenly we're very sensitive to heat, so we suddenly think that there's more than before, whereas actually it's living this monastic life, it is slowly reducing. So in the meantime, be very patient, be willing to endure what's happening, and contemplate the disadvantage of the sense world. As you experience it, simply just contemplate the disadvantage of it, and in time it will slowly fade, and practice will improve and develop bit by bit.
If you see a situation in which a lot of people are suffering, and you're moved by that suffering and by your own suffering, and there is something you can do to change it, how can you, or should you, try and change it? And how can you do this without too much attachment?
Okay. The Brahmaviharas of metta and karuna, whether it's directed towards ourselves or towards others, is the wish or the aspiration for others to be happy and well. So when we see other beings suffering and see ourselves suffering, then the first thing is simply to cultivate that aspiration. May they go beyond that suffering. This is what compassion is. But we have to do this and develop it and act in accordance with our own strength, or in line with our own capacity and capability. At first we perceive everything through in the light of a self. We see ourselves as being, as having a self, or being a self. So really what we have to do is we have to help ourselves first to clear up this misconception using the path of sila, samadhi and panya. We have to actually go beyond this sense of our own self first. This is called developing a pure mind. When you have the real metta and karuna of a pure mind, you'll really see that there is no self within you. And once you've eradicated your own defilements, then that metta, loving kindness and compassion, you'll be able to develop it and act on it in a way where you'll be doing so without attachment. So the question was that it's sometimes thought that samadhi, concentration, brings on or brings mindfulness to fruition or improves mindfulness, but isn't it the case, though, that it's actually mindfulness that leads to concentration? So Ajahn reply was that in the Eightfold Path and in the Buddhist teachings, it's always taught that mindfulness is of great use and brings great benefit. Mindfulness is important and present in practices like Anapanasati, Maranasati, Bhutanusati. These are all recollections or mindfulness practices. In the Eightfold Path is divided into say 3 groups: Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. And so you have to understand that the Samadhi group actually contains also right mindfulness, sati, and also virya. So they're very much part of the same thing. When you have sati well developed, then samadhi will arise, and as a result of that, you'll see things as they really are. The body is just the body, elements are just elements, 6 sense bases are just 6 sense bases. So the mind will concentrate and see this thing very clearly. Now, in right concentration, this will lead to the jhana factors, piti, sukha, ekagata, etc. When the mind withdraws from that samadhi, once it's experienced samadhi, then based on that there will be very clear mindfulness. You'll be able to practice the satipatthana very clearly because the mind has been strengthened by that samadhi. You'll see it all very clearly based on the samadhi. So in the Eightfold Path, the 2, mindfulness and concentration, actually develop each other. And similarly, the whole of the Eightfold Path, all the path factors develop each other. If you have mindfulness in all 4 postures, it leads to very good samadhi. But actually, when they arise, when these factors really arise and come to fruition, they all arise together. So, to sum up, Ajahn has closed by saying, well, these questions today about practice and about our mind and how it is we practice, it's similar to, say, these are based on things which perhaps we've studied and read and thought about, but we can't quite see clearly yet. Studying and learning is an aspect or a characteristic of memory and perception. And what happens then when the mind gets a little bit peaceful is these then questions arise based on those things which we've heard and read. We perhaps ask, what is this? Is this piti? Is this real happiness? Is this samadhi? Is this jhana? It's based on all our memories and perceptions of Dhamma which we've studied. But what we have to do then is see these things, all these states, really in the present moment as they really are, and see this present moment itself, just in the sense of arising and passing away. So everything that we've studied and read, we actually have to take it and use it in our practice. Everything we've heard before and read and learned is what we call pariyat, the studying of Dhamma, and now we have to strive hard to do the patipat, the practice. Our defilements will slowly wear away as we practice gradually. So we have to put forth a lot of effort. We do things like study the Vinaya, but even that, not too much. What we're really trying to do is to learn how to make the mind peaceful and follow the ways, the teaching, the training as was laid down and understood by the Ajahn and the Man. We may sometimes feel a little bit disheartened if the practice isn't going so well or going fast enough. But it's really just like that planting of a tree which we plant, and for so long we water it and we feed it and we protect it and we do everything right. But when the actual fruits will bear, or when the fruits will come to bear, it's not a sure thing. So in the meantime, we have to have lots of patient endurance. So may all of you strive in your practice, grow in the Dhamma, and each and every one of you, may you one day realize that Dhamma for yourselves.